Imagine a perfectly rigid glass pillar. It stands flawless, bearing immense internal tension until a single, invisible shift in pressure shatters it completely. In the study of constitutional medicine, this is the architecture of the Ignatia profile. It defines a patient type known for extreme rigidity that ends in abrupt, volatile systemic collapses. At first glance, the clinical pointers for Ignatia read like a disconnected list of morphological traits. The patient usually presents as lean, thin, and long-faced. Then there are the contradictory emotional states. They are categorized as simultaneously sad and prone to anger, suffering from sudden spikes of anxiety in the middle of the night. Rounding out the profile are specific metabolic markers, cravings for hot or raw foods, and a ravenous hunger that strikes immediately after a fever breaks. The traditional approach to learning this profile relies on rote memorization. Students are told to commit this chaotic laundry list of symptoms to memory without understanding how they relate. But mastering Ignatia requires looking past the list. Every disparate physical and metabolic symptom is a downstream effect of a singular, highly rigid psychological framework. This source diagram reveals the structural framework that governs the clinical profile. The top node anchoring the structure is what texts define as the good girl or good boy image. The primary literature defines this directly. Individuals with high obedience and an intense interest in studies, presenting as well-behaved children. This perfectionism is an active defense mechanism. The specific goal behind this behavior? To avoid being scolded or punished. This explains the very first clinical pointer, their notable soberness. That serious demeanor is the direct output of relentless diligence and fragile self-esteem. Maintaining this facade requires constant psychological tension. Consequently, their emotional baseline rests on sadness or anger because their self-image is under constant threat of failure. In the Ignatia constitution, obedience functions as a structural defense mechanism rather than a moral virtue, a wall built to protect their sense of worth. This psychological armor eventually manifests in the patient's literal physical structure. The mind state locks the body into a specific posture. Their relentless studiousness translates into chronic physical tension. You will often observe them sitting perfectly upright at a desk, completely ignoring the back support of their chair. This chronic structural tension aligns with their other morphological markers, the lean frame, the thin build, and the long-faced presentation. Holding a rigid, unsupported posture requires a massive, continuous expenditure of both muscular and mental energy compared to a relaxed state. The Ignatia patient physically embodies their inflexibility. That rigid, unsupported spine is the outward projection of an internal, unyielding demand for perfection. The final node in this triad details exactly how the system breaks. In clinical shorthand, AF stands for ailments from, the precise trigger that shatters the structure. For the Ignatia profile, ailments stem from emotional hurt or a sudden loss of social or academic position. The trauma centers on a drop in status. The clinical text offers a specific example, a student losing the first rank or receiving lower marks than peers. This drop triggers a physiological cascade. Emotional failure converts into systemic illness, presenting as sudden fever or diarrhea. This explains their distinct emotional modalities. Their condition is aggravated by contradiction, noted as contradiction less than, because being corrected is a direct threat to their need to be right. They also possess the clinical paradox of being aggravated by consolation. To the Ignatia constitution, receiving pity validates the fact that they have lost their position. The resulting fever or digestive distress is a systemic collapse occurring at the exact moment their armor fails to secure their rank. Once the structural collapse occurs, the body produces a wave of specific autonomic symptoms. We see precise chronobiological markers. The patient will experience spikes of anxiety occurring strictly between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. The metabolic paradoxes also follow a pattern. After the system thumbs burn the stress-induced fever, they are left with an intense, immediate hunger. Their distressed digestive tract is then uniquely soothed by consuming specifically hot foods and raw foods. These autonomic quirks trace back to a central nervous system pushed into overdrive by an acute injury to their self-esteem, followed by physical exhaustion. The digestive cravings and the timing of night terrors both originate from the same source point. They are the downstream consequences of losing their rigid perfectionism. Looking at this complete conceptual map, the chaotic laundry list of symptoms is replaced by a structured architecture. The Ignatia constitution operates on a single mechanism, a rigid adherence to diligence, maintained to secure social position and avoid the pain of failure. This shift allows a practitioner to move beyond treating symptoms in isolation. Identifying the psychological trigger provides a clear map of why the physical system is failing. Ultimately, constitutional profiling isn't about memorizing a list of facts. It's about understanding how a patient's core psychology dictates their physical presentation.